Good evening, all members. So we are going to start the session. Our resource person has already joined with us. So welcome you all to the YMS second webinar. This is the second part of our second webinar. So this webinar is intended to discuss about the research methodology and how to do a correct publication. So we started this discussion yesterday. Dr. Danushka Udyanga gave a good start for us. He discussed about how to select a research topic and how to do literature survey and the ways of doing publication. So today we are having yet another experienced researcher with us. So Dr. Damayanti Herath, she is a senior lecturer in Department of Computer Engineering, University of Peradeniya. So today she will going to discuss about the tools and technique that we are uh, most popularly using to do a research and the publication. So without taking much time, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Damayanti Herath. Over to you, Dr. Damayanti.
Hi, very good evening, everyone. So that experienced researcher could not come, so I am going to deliver the session today. As Dushanta mentioned, anyway, thank you, Dushanta, for handing over the session to me. And first of all, thank you, IESL, YMS, Young Members Section, for giving me this opportunity to talk to this audience today. And thank you all for joining with me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can clearly hear you.
Okay, I just got a notification, that's why. Thanks. So yeah, it's Monday morning and after work, probably most of you are joining. So I'm hoping to make this session as interactive as possible, as well as helpful and useful as possible for both of us. So let me start by sharing my screen. Let's share sound and share my screen. Right. Okay. This is where I am from. I'm from University of Peradeniya, and this is a landmark picture I usually share at the beginning of my talk. This we call the Sleeping Giant or the Hantana Mountain. This is where I am, and I'm talking to you today from. To introduce myself, I'm Damayanti Hera, and I'm a graduate of Faculty of Engineering, University of Peradeniya. And after that, I completed my PhD at Melbourne School of Engineering, University of Melbourne in Australia. Currently, I'm University of Peradeniya. And my research interests are in machine learning, and I also explore about explainable machine learning and also computational biology. And my research profile can be viewed if you visit Google Scholar under my name. You'll be able to identify or understand what my research interest and my research work has been so far. We should speak for itself. Right. So that's a bit about myself, but I would also like to know, it would be great if we also could each introduce us to each other. So please, can you please go to this link, go to menti.com and use the code 67162512. There I have asked a couple of questions for us to learn a bit more about each other during these 1.5 hours or so that we are going to spend together. So, please go to menti.com and you will be asked to enter a code. Please enter 67162512. And I'm also going to share a link in the chat, which is actually a feedback form. While we are having this discussion, if you have any feedback, any questions, feel free to post into this form, or actually you can send in the chat as well. Okay. So my first question is, how are you making an impact? So I didn't really want to ask what are you doing at the moment, what are you working on or so. Today, as we are going to talk about, we have now this webinar series about research. I would like to know each one to tell us a little bit about how are you going to make an impact? Um, what is your plan? Or maybe what are you working on? Please share with us. What are you doing? What sort of work are you going to do? It can be anything about yourself and what you are doing. And please don't be a lot serious as well. It's just a Monday evening. So we'll wait a few minutes for your answers to come. Please go to menti.com and use the code 67162512. So thank you for those answers. Please keep them coming. Yeah, there's someone who is working on a research publication. There's also Suranjit, currently studying master's degree in China related to soil erosion science and engineering. I'll wait for a few more answers. My international professional engineering review. Yes, that's great to hear. At least 20%. Okay, I'll let you ponder a little bit on that question. And the next question I have is, have you published before? Or how is your status at the moment? So today we are going to talk about publications. So it's good if we could learn in the audience how our distribution is. So please let us know, have you published before? So if you have published before, please click yes. And I hope you get a multiple choice MCQ question. So um, yeah. If you have not published, but you are working on it, which means you will be publishing soon, please choose the third option. Yeah, there are some answers coming. We'll have a look at later as well. Yeah. Okay, so I think that gives us some understanding. So far, very few has participated, but some understanding about where we stand. I see there are some people who have already published and maybe would like to discuss further on this topic. Next question I had was, what is the pressing question that you have on the publication process? How to write a good paper and select a good journal to publish a paper. I think I'll pause around like two minutes or so here because this is an important question because there's no point of me talking for 1.5 hours if I'm not going to answer any of these questions. So I think it's very important that I know what are the questions in the audience. So I'll take some time here. This is easy. So, I mean, I can just answer this question and wrap up the session. So please let me know what are the questions you have on the publication process. Need to learn the process. Make sense? Fair enough to take an idea of the publication process. So now what I will do is, without taking time, I'll keep these questions as it is, and you can be responding to this survey. And I will go back to my presentation and continue the discussion, and we'll come back. So thank you for all your responses. It was really useful for us to understand who are we that is in the audience. And today I'm going to talk with you about road to publication. The reason for having this is the motivation, I believe, because we oftentimes talk about what is research, we talk about scientific writing, etc., etc. But oftentimes we see that we are a little bit confused or maybe have no idea about what exactly are the steps in the publication process. It's not that complicated, to be honest. So it's a very simple process, but we are not discussing it often. So therefore, we thought we will allocate some time to discuss about a road to publication. And so this is so by the end of this talk, idea is you will have a good understanding about what are the key steps in the publication process. And also, I'm hoping to give you some time to initiate this process yourself. And at the same time, we know that for around 1 year or so before, there's a hype around generative AI tools, and a lot of people are considering using generative AI tools to automate their day-to-day task. So I am hoping to discuss about using generative AI tools in some of the steps in the publication process. This is a group of, I think most of us in this forum are engineers. So engineers create the world that never has been. That is how we say. So I think it's very important we also discuss in this forum itself what are the things to be considered if we are going to use these generative AI tools in the publication process. So before going into the details, I would like to gratefully acknowledge the authors of all the work that I will be citing in this presentation. I'll be using some cartoons, some figures, some tables extracted from other references. So authors of all this work are gratefully acknowledged. Right. I think as Dushyant mentioned in this webinar, the focus is around different activities in research, especially in terms of publishing a research. And I think on Friday, we had a discussion around what is research and introduction, what are the key steps in research, etc. Just for the completion, I thought I will discuss a little bit about what is research. And if I'm repeating anything, please bear with me for a few minutes. So this is the dictionary definition of research. Research is defined as the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. So that is like the formal definition. But if you take in a very practical sense, which is the road that I'm going to take today, what I'm hoping to do is I'm going to share some practical experience I have had along these last few years being a researcher. And I hope my experience that I'm sharing will be useful for you to develop a good publication. So as I said, this is the formal definition of research, which any of us can look into very easily. But in my definition, or a very practical definition would be research is any work. That is, we can identify three key elements or characteristics of a research. A research is usually curiosity driven. So somebody has to think, okay, people have worked on this problem, but why didn't they think, or have they think of this problem in this manner? Or why didn't they think of this problem in this manner? So usually research is definitely a curiosity driven. If you think to yourself, if I think to myself why I started doing research, there will be some curiosity that was sparked some time back. And the other thing is research often involves collaboration. Good research often involves collaboration. As we see, most of the work that has been done so far, very rarely, sometimes we see that individual work as well, but very often it involves collaboration. Especially today, it involves collaboration across different disciplines. And the other thing is, research is often, it will have an impact. And that impact out of the research can be, for example, it can be a patent. It can be a new algorithm that you are introducing to the world. And also another impact that is coming out of the research would be the publication, a publication. So that is what we are going to talk about today. And just a little bit history to, as I said, it's not, I'm going to share some practical experiences, stories around this topic. If you look at this history, how this whole publication process started, actually it is said that the whole advancement in these printing technologies, to that, these scientific publications contributed a lot. And this is a very interesting article if you choose to read, where they published some of a gallery showing the photos relevant to the world's oldest scientific journal called Philosophical Transactions. So it has been published in 1665. So this is how the world's first publication, the scientific publication, the cover of that publication has looked like. There was also this interesting image that I wanted to share from the same set of collection, from the same collection. It's about the lady with the dog in this picture. Her name is Alice Lee, and apparently, before her, there has been a belief that because of the skull of a man is bigger than a skull of a woman, men are superior than women. So Alice Lee has written a paper and done a publication actually for her dissertation, for a what we call as a dissertation is a thesis. A dissertation is written for a qualification for let's say a master's or a PhD. For her PhD dissertation, she has studied about this fact and she has shown that there is no correlation between the size of the skull and the intelligence, which essentially meant there is no difference between the intelligence of men and the intelligence of the women. So there has been some controversy around her publication. And also, if you read her story in the Wikipedia, it also says that she has published some 26 odd publications, and two of them she has rejected being a co-author of these publication, saying that I have just done arithmetic of those papers. I think that's a very good story for us to remind in this evening as well. I think about the co-authorship. So essentially what it says is she has said, I have not done enough contribution to be a co-author of this paper. So please exclude me. Yeah, I think that is a very good professional scholarly characteristic of her. So yeah, that's a little bit story from the history. And also to talk about publications, I was thinking that let's watch a video together today, all of us. Yeah. So what is the most cited paper in the world?
Which are the world's most cited papers? Nature asked Thomson Reuters for the top 100 from its Web of Science database, which goes back more than a century.
So Web of Science is a database that indexes publications that have been made so far, and for its 100th year anniversary, they have inquired what is the most cited paper.
If you printed out the first page of every item in this index, the stack of paper would almost reach to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. More than half has been cited only once, or not
so
at
as
all.
it says, it's not on, I mean, in the world, there is a huge focus and interest for publications. We'll discuss why as well.
Only the top 1.5 meters of the mountain has more than 1,000 citations. Among these, Watson and Crick's paper on the structure of DNA. But to reach the top 100 takes something extra special. At number 1, with over 300,000 citations, is a 1951 paper describing a way to measure the amount of protein in a solution. Similar biological methods dominate the list, along with papers on software and statistics. These most cited papers aren't the most glamorous. Many of them got to the top by a quirk of luck or circumstance. Still, scientists have relied on these techniques to make more famous advances. Explore some more of the top 100 papers yourself at nature.com/top100.
Yes. So that is about the So that is about how, like a little bit of the history of the publication. So we saw how publications have started and what sort of impact people have made, and also again how many papers there are with more than 1,000 citations at the moment, and what sort of impact they have made. And yeah, so before going into anything, I think we should ask this question: why should we bother? Why should we publish? And if we try to ask that question, there will be a bunch of answers. One key answer being because we want to share the knowledge globally. Because researchers, academics, engineers, anyone, when they are working on something new and they have figured out something new, or not new really, novel, that is different than what has been practiced so far, we would like to share that knowledge with everyone. So a publication allows us to share our knowledge globally with everyone, which in effect has the result of expanding the knowledge. So we get an opportunity to expand the knowledge within that domain that we are working on. And also, it can also attract collaborations to us, because if I work in a certain domain, maybe if I don't make a publication, nobody in this domain would know that I am working on this particular topic. Whereas if I could publish my work, there will be people reading my work and they will know that, okay, there is this person who is seem to be working on this topic and I'm working on the similar topic. So maybe I should collaborate with them. So a publication can attract collaborations. It allows us to network with other people. And the other thing is, oftentimes one would consider publishing as per work or higher studies opportunities. For us, if you are an undergraduate student or maybe you are a graduate student, but you are looking for another postgraduate qualification, another PhD, another master's qualification, having a publication will be a strong advantage for you in your CV. If you have a publication, it shows that you have almost completed the full circle of research. So sometimes people are very driven or motivated for publishing. And also, sometimes, whether we like it or not, people are interested or motivated to publish for the fame, to have a good name. Talking about fame, I wanted to do a little activity with you. If you go to this URL, I will just type it in the chat. So just quickly type it in the chat so you can access it. SciMago journal ranking. Yeah, so this is the website that you will be going to if you click on that link. So SciMago Journal Ranking is a website that ranks the journal. So there was one question that how do I know which journal to publish? So SciMago JR would be a good resource to look into. This is a well-reputed resource, and a lot of people use this resource to see how reputed or how quality a particular journal is. Now, because we are talking about fame, and there's this bunch of engineers that in this forum, I thought we will look at the country rank, and we will try to see with all of us together. If you check the engineering discipline, if you are still with me, can you please give me a thumbs up that you have gone to this URL and you are seeing what I'm seeing in your PC? Please give me a thumbs up. Yeah, there are two here. So now what I'm going to do together with you is I'm going to check engineering, all subject areas. I'll keep it as it is. Let us see where we stand. So I can go to, so yeah, sorry, we are in Asia. I have to select Asia. And I have to select Sri Lanka. So here we are. As a country, this is what we look like in terms of publications. So whenever you want to know about ourselves, somebody else, some other country, or some other journals, here is a resource that you can use. So if you go to Sri Lanka, so if I just again select engineering, okay, there are some other, I just select engineering covering all the disciplines. This is how we look like. We have an H index of 81 and there are 6,000 or so documents uploaded out there. As a country, for the publications we have done, there are close to 50,000 citations we have received, but citations per document is 7.33. And there's also another thing I could do is, if I again go to SciMago, there's a chat. Okay, thank you for that message. So I think now you should be able to see my screen. If you go to SciMago, this is what I was referring to. If you go to SciMago, there you can select these country ranks. And I just selected Sri Lanka engineering and try to see what are the statistics corresponding to Sri Lanka. And also Scimago provides a visualization tool. And so I was thinking, shall we compare countries? You can also do compare journals in this website, maybe in your own time. So I'm going to try Sri Lanka. And can someone please suggest in chat what would be the good country to compare against with? Yeah, a country. Can you suggest a country to share against with? There is a chat. So thanks for that. India. So that is not a, we know that that's a tough competitor, but I will try anyway. Yeah. Hong Kong. Okay, again, a tough competitor, I think. Okay, so yeah, maybe I'll try India because it was suggested first. So if we compare with India, this is how we look like. As you can see, in terms of documents, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if we try to plot it into a same plot, we are almost close to zero. And this is how our statistics look like. And Nepal, maybe Nepal is a good country to check. Yeah. So likewise, I think as engineers, it's also important that we have a good picture about what is happening around us. So I think it's these type of tools are anyway useful for us. So if I check something like Nepal, this is how we compare. So we are almost similar in terms of publications. So what I wanted to show you here is, so these publications can also bring us fame. Fame as a person, fame as a university, fame as an institution, fame as a discipline, as well as fame as a country as well. So I think it's important thing for us to remember in terms of why we should publish. Maybe fame is not really a bad thing. It shows the credibility or scientific thinking around our work. Yeah, so I hope now you know the Scimago journal ranking website. You can explore more about the journals out there as well as country. You can use the visualization tool and you can play around with it. So what are the types of different publications? So this is coming from the paper from Springer, Types of Scientific Publication. And it's a very good visualization. It shows what are the different types of publications that are out there. And if you are someone who is generally reading research papers, you would be already familiar with these most of these publication types. And when we go up in this pyramid, the value is increased. And I think I agree with the interpretation that is shown in this publication. Of course, it's published. It means that it has been accepted. So what it says is, if you take something like web page, non-scientific articles, etc., its value is at the bottom. And more to that would be the patents, technical papers, and theses are regarded as of more value. And more of that are conference proceedings. And usually journals are regarded more in value than the conference proceedings. So a conference proceedings is a booklet that is printed at the end of the conference, listing or publishing all the papers or the work that was published in that particular conference. Whereas in a journal, we don't have usually a conference attached to it. Sometimes there are instances where we have a conference, but they will be publishing in a journal as well. But most of the time, we send our paper or our manuscript to a journal without attending a conference. And book chapters are regarded to be of more value compared to journals, and editing books is compared of more value, and the of highest value is to author a book. So it is considered to be of highest value. Are there any questions around this? I hope this is clear. So this pyramid shows us what are the types of publications out there. So if you, I think based on where you are, I don't know, maybe you are a senior academic, senior engineer, or maybe a starting engineer or an undergraduate student. So you can consider, it would be very useful for us to know what are the types of publications that are out there that will match my current skill level and that will match my current work. Right. Now we have a good understanding about how we started discussing about publications and what is the importance of publication? Why should we even bother about publishing our work? I hope I motivated you enough. And we also have a good understanding about what are the different types of publications that we could aim for. Before I go forward, are there any questions? If all is clear, please give me a thumbs up. So then I can quickly move forward. Two is not enough. Okay. Right. So thank you for responding. Please, I hope everyone else will be responding as well. Right. Okay. So this is what we are aiming at. We are aiming at a publication. A publication can be a paper, a thesis, a conference proceeding, or a journal paper. It can be a book chapter. It can be a book. So, but this is what we want. This is what we are aiming at. So where do we start this publication process? Any thoughts? What is the starting point of a publication process? The key element of the publication process, the first step. Any thoughts, any answers on the chat? So where do we start this publication process? Yeah, so one answer is manuscript, but before manuscript, yeah, so it's a very open-ended question. So, but thank you for that answer. So the beginning of the publication process would be the completed research. And before everything, we need a completed research to publish about. So the first starting point, the step would be the completed research. But that completed research can be of different scope. It can be, it can be maybe a very small scope, but also it can be a large scope. Maybe you are targeting for a book or a book chapter or a journal. Usually the scope of the research would be higher. But if you're planning for maybe an abstract or an extended abstract publication, or maybe a symposium, a publication at a symposium, or maybe a conference proceedings even, the scope can be less than compared to a journal because as we saw in that pyramid, but to start with, we need a completed research. The next step would be, as was correctly said, the next step in the process would be the manuscript preparation. And then we do the manuscript submission. The next step would be the peer review and then the peer review decision. And then we can move to the publication. It's a very simplified process of the publication, but I think it has the key elements, the main steps in a publication that we should be aware of as someone who's trying to publish. So do you know the difference between a publication and a manuscript? Please, can you give me like thumbs up if you know the difference between manuscript and a publication? So the difference between manuscript and a publication is up until it is published, we call our draft paper as the manuscript. So that's what it means. So until it is published, we call it as the manuscript. But once it is published, we can call it's a publication or a paper. So the first step would be after we have completed research, we'll move into the manuscript preparation and then we will submit the manuscript. And then that manuscript will go through a peer review process. I will try to take them one by one. And then after the peer review process, we will get a decision from the peer review and then we can move on to the publication. So Yeah. But how long is this going to take? How long is this going to take? So what I will do is quickly. Yeah, unfortunately I can't do a poll. So good question to ask would be, I think oftentimes we have the question, I mean, we all want a publication and we also now have a completed research. How long is this going to take? The answer is it really depends. It depends on the venue that you are submitting your manuscript to. But oftentimes, if it is a conference, because the conference has a date where the conference should occur, they will have a fixed timeline. So you will know, okay, this is the date I have to submit my manuscript. And by this date, they will send me whether my paper, what is the decision after the peer review. And after this date, they will publish my manuscript. For a journal, usually they give a range, how long they will take to publication. Likewise, how long the length it can take can vary, but at the same time, I must say that sometimes you might get emails once you have published once or twice, that emails saying that we will publish in 1 to 2 days. And usually they are not good venues to go for because 1 to 2 days is not enough sufficient time for a quality peer review. That is what we assume. So yeah. Um, so in this session, I would like to briefly touch upon what should we strive for if we want to now. We have a completed research. This is where we are aiming to go to. So what should we strive for if we want to uh, get Hi. Now that's a test of patience, and congratulations to all of us for almost winning that competition. So I'll quickly share my screen, and I promise I will not spend too much time. And within the next half an hour, what I will do is I'll complete about what to strive in writing for a publication. And also I'll try to discuss about where we can publish, places to publish. And I'll wrap up by talking about use of generative AI tools in publication process. If you come across any interruptions, please straight away let me know. So as I said, there will be a separate session, I think, on scientific writing. So I will not be spending too much time on that. So the rule of thumb would be keep your readers in mind and aim for clarity, brevity, to be concise and exact of the words, and to be not boring, have variation in style, and to be complete. As Mark Twain once said, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. So when you write too long sentences and when someone is talking too long, it means they don't understand the topic as much as they claim they know. So I think a good thing to strive for when writing, when aiming for a publication would be when writing a manuscript is to aim for clarity, brevity, variation in style, and completeness. I'll quickly move on to what are the venues that we can publish at. So we looked at what are the types of publications. Yeah, we can consider to publish our work. Oftentimes, it's a good idea to look at To be safe, now what I would do is keep my video off because that's not that important anyway. So if you could please allow me to quickly share screen. Right. So where to publish? I'll quickly move there. One thing we can do is we can look at the bunch of papers that we are reading at the moment and then see where some relevant articles have been published already. For example, there are some already popular publishers such as Springer, IEEE, elsewhere. Of course, Nature, they are considered as very well reputed publishers and we can consider to be published with them. The SciMago journal ranking website that we looked at the very beginning would be also a very good resource where we can type in the journal and check what is their ranking and what sort of recognition they have gained over the past years for a particular domain. And of course, there are venues like IESL annual sessions, which is giving a very, very good opportunity for a local community, especially people, especially like engineers or people working around engineering disciplines in Sri Lanka to gather and share their work. So place like IESL annual session, and you can also consider publishing a preprint. Now that we have I hope you can hear me. Please give me a thumbs up.
Yes, Dr. Damayanti, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you for that. So we can also consider to publish a preprint. So now there are sites such as, if you might have come across already, sites like RXV, ARXIV, where they are allowing to publish a preprint of our article, which means that it has not gone through the peer review process, which means that we can't still consider it as to be a legit publication, accepted publication, but we can consider to upload a preprint of our work to let the world know that we are working on this work and this is what we have done so far. So what are the deciding factors on deciding where to publish? The deciding factors could be your supervisors or the collaborators that you are working with, maybe because they would also have some saying in this. All the authors of the work should be in agreement that this is a journal that we are going to publish to. So it's a good idea to talk among the group of researchers where we are going to publish this work. And also a deciding factor can be the impact factor of a journal or a conference or a journal that is attached to a conference. Impact factor, the higher the impact factor, the higher the reputation for that particular journal. So you can search for what is the impact factor for this last 2 years for this particular journal. And you can aim for, okay, what is the impact factor I should go for? Because as I said, higher the impact factor, usually it is regarded as the better the journal, more reputed the journal is. And we can also look at related articles. As I said, what are the articles that is in our references section and see where they have published, and we can aim to publish on those venues. And the other thing is whether we like it or not, sometimes the cost can be also a deciding factor. Unfortunately, journals, maybe they are of high impact factor, but they come with a cost. For example, especially some publishers or some journals that allow us to do open access publishing, which means that they are going to allow the whole world to read our full paper. They will say that we are going to charge $2,500 if you want to publish open access manuscript with us. So there maybe the cost can be a deciding factor for us, and we can decide, okay, we are unable to pay that much, or in principle, I'm not in favor of such an arrangement. I'm going to go for a free journal, which is allowing me to publish my full paper, which can be of lower impact factor, but I'm happy with it. So that can be a deciding factor as well. Why we should bother about publishing in good journals or conferences? Because predatory journals are not uncommon. There are, a lot of predatory journals, predatory conferences, which are claiming to give you instant publications, high-speed peer review process, and they will say that we will publish your work in around 2-3 weeks, and likewise, and they will ask also for us to sometimes pay higher a cost for that publication. So it's another scam in a way, unfortunately, but they are not uncommon as well. So it's very good. We must bear in mind that predatory journals are not uncommon, and therefore we should aim to look in good journals that are reputed, because that can affect your reputation. The journal that you are publishing with, the venue that you are publishing with, can affect your reputation. Are there any questions around this topic, what we discussed so far? So please keep them coming in the chat if you have any questions. I would also like to briefly, now we are discussing about publication process. As I said, we will start with the completed research, and then we will do the first thing. We have to decide, okay, what is the journal or the venue, the conference, the symposium that we are going to submit our work into, and then we will start writing our manuscript. Following those writing tips I just mentioned, and also we'll have to be careful about the formatting guidelines. So how to format our manuscript? It's good to always consult the instruction section of a conference web page or the journal website. You can go to the journal website. Usually there is a section called Guide for Authors, which will gives us what are the instructions for authors in terms of formatting and the review process and the formatting the figures, tables, etc. And also a conference also generally has a section called Guidelines for the Authors. So it's always good to consult that section as well. The next I'm going to go into, as I said, I'm going to answer 3 questions: what to strive for, where to publish, and what happens. Is there any source we can find credible future conferences? So, sorry, I will take that question before going forward. So there is a question asking, is there any source we can find credible future conferences? So in terms of, when it comes to computer engineering, one thing I would do is, usually as IEEE, for example, is considered to be a reputed publisher. IEEE also has in their website, there has a section where it lists down the future conferences. So what I would do is I can visit the IEEE website, and then I can check what are the upcoming conferences. I can filter by what are the domains, and also I can filter by when the call for paper deadline is, the paper deadline is, etc. And I think we can also make a search for conferences that are publishing with these publishers, and as well as, so that, yeah, that is about the conferences. I think that is something I would do. But if it is journals, maybe we can use a resource like SciMago journal ranking website. Does that answer your question? And we can sometimes check in Google Scholar. Type in, if you want to check about a certain conference, just type in that conference name in Google Scholar. And sometimes the conference organizers would arrange the conference to be indexed in Google Scholar. For example, you can see what is the H index for that particular conference. What is the H index for the papers that were published in that particular conference? So those would be some tips to find out some reputed future conferences. And of course, your collaborators would be able to inform you about upcoming good future conferences. And now I will try to answer what happens after the peer review. So we know that, okay, in this process, now we have a completed research, we have prepared our manuscript in a good manner that can be read by the reviewers and the readers as we think. And we have now submitted the manuscript to the submission to the publisher via their submission portal, maybe a portal like CMT. Many use the CMT submission portal, or EDAS or EasyChair. So now I have submitted my manuscript. The next step would be the peer review. So all the publications out there have been, if they are published, it means that they have gone through a peer review, which means that a number of reviewers, a group of people that are unknown to the authors have gone through that particular manuscript and reviewed that manuscript and given their comments before the publication, which adds a lot of credibility to the publication, because anyone can write a manuscript, but peer review is very important, because that is what ensures that only the quality work are being published. So what happens in the peer review? There can be only 3 outcomes. So either the manuscript can be straight away accepted, in which case it will be proceeded to the editorial review and it will be published. But it's very, very, very rare that you get an acceptance at the first time. Most of the time, it will be accepted with revisions, accepted with major revisions, or accepted with minor revisions, in which case we will have to revise our manuscript based on considering their suggestions and comments, and we will resubmit it to the journal. We call it when we are resubmitting, usually we have to provide a rebuttal. So this is an example of a rebuttal that I have written. So this is the comments to authors are the comments that came from the reviewers, saying that, for example, they are saying, while the article provides a reasonable overview of these software and limitations, a number of issues with the writing and construction of the paper reduced enthusiasm and made it difficult to assess the quality of the content itself. Now that's a critical comment coming from a reviewer. So this was one of my manuscripts that I wrote when I was a PhD student, but maybe even now such comments can come. So then I would have to, what I would have to do is I will have to revise my manuscript, addressing their comments. So what is shown in blue is how I have revised my manuscript based on, so the content in my manuscript have been changed considering their suggestion, and I am showing in blue, okay, this is how I have changed. At the same time, I am giving my own comment to the reviewer's comment, saying whether I agree, disagree, or if I agree, how did I change my manuscript? So usually what we will do is we will revise our manuscript considering reviewers' suggestions, and we will resubmit our work, including a rebuttal. And oftentimes, the manuscript can be rejected. It can be rejected, and the rejection will come with reasons, and it should come with reasons. So the reviewers will give, okay, considering these factors, unfortunately, we have to reject your manuscript. In that case, what we have to do is we will have to revise considering their suggestions and submit potential to probably to another venue. But I think I must emphasize that it's very, very important that we pay attention and pay respect to the reviewer's suggestions, and revise and submit if we come across a rejection, because it's nothing to be feel bad. It's the peer review process that make our work a quality publication. Okay, now is some work time. So whatever you can do or dream, you can. We have to begin it. So that is what this quote says. What I was hoping to do was today in this session, I was hoping to briefly discuss the structure of a manuscript. So now we know what is to strive for in a publication, and what happens in the peer review, what happens in the publication process. I hope now you have a good understanding about the publication process and what we should do. And I'll briefly touch upon what are the main sections of a manuscript usually. If you have already read a couple of papers, you are already aware that we see that there would be an introduction section, materials and methods section, results section, and conclusion section in a publication. Start and together with references, abstract, and title. So usually the introduction section tells the reader why this work has been done. For example, it will introduce this work and rationalize the novelty of the work with respect to the related work, basically a literature review. And the materials and methods section tells the reader how that work was done. And the resource section tells the reader what came out of this work, what was seen, and the conclusion basically tells, so what? What are the conclusions coming out of this work? Together with the references, giving more credibility to our work, showing what based on what work that we did this work, and an abstract and the title. So I wanted to share this quick trick with you, because oftentimes, as we know, okay, sometimes having a completed research is easier than starting the writing process, starting the manuscript process. But I think over these series of webinars, you will get some good tips to accelerate that writing process. I wanted to take a few minutes to share this as well. This was shared with me by Dr. Upaka Ratnayaka, who is an associate professor in a university in Ireland. So this is one thing you can do to start off when starting the manuscript. First, take a sheet of paper. Take a sheet of paper and outline what are the key sections of the paper, and then seriously spend some time to understand and note down what am I going to include under each of these sections in very briefly. This can take a long time, it can take a longer time, and it can also take a couple of iterations. But once you have such a sketch, the writing manuscript part become a lot easier. So I was hoping to spend 5 to 10 minutes in this session itself on that task, but due to time limitation, because we already had a break anyway, I will keep it for you to do it in your own time. So the idea is, once we have the completed research and we are approaching now, we want to do a publication and we are initiating our writing process, a good idea would be to have a good in detail but brief SketchUp of the paper, of the manuscript. Before going into the next section, I would like to touch upon the scientific misconduct. So throughout this publication process, we have to ensure that we are not conducting any scientific misconduct. So what falls under scientific misconduct? So fabrication or making up data is considered to be scientific misconduct and is not acceptable. Or falsification, distorting the data, is not acceptable. Improper research methods are not acceptable. It can lead to an outright rejection of your manuscript. And usually they are not very difficult to note as well. When reviewers, usually they are experienced people with expertise in that particular domain, so they can very easily see the instances of fabrication, falsification, or improper research methods, and that can lead to outright rejection. The other thing is the plagiarism. It's also important that we know the difference between plagiarism and similarity. So plagiarism means presenting other people's work as your own work. So that is plagiarism, and that is not acceptable as a good scholarly work. So in throughout the publication process, we have to make a note of that. But the similarity is different. So sometimes you can have 100% similarity in writing with someone else's work, but you may not have plagiarized. At the same time, you can have 0% similarity in writing with someone else's work, but 100% plagiarized content. So because similarity is very easy to notice. We can use some tools to measure the similarity, but plagiarism of work, it's difficult to notice. So a human intervention is needed to detect plagiarism. So please keep a note of that. And please, it's very important for all of us that we do not commit to the crime of plagiarism. So what can be the consequences? As I said, of course, it can lead to an outright rejection of your manuscript. At the same time, it can affect your reputation. Maybe you can be blacklisted from submitting certain journals, or you can be blacklisted from some venues as well. if you are quoted to have conducted scientific misconduct. With that, it's very important. Now we are going to talk about generative artificial intelligence, generative AI tools. I kept it as the next section of the scientific misconduct because some content of the coming content are relevant to this. So in general, generative artificial AI or Gen AI refers to the techniques that are using these machine learning models called large language models and generative adversarial networks, particular AI models, that are used to generate new and original content from existing data. Because this session is not about Gen AI, I would provide a very simplified view of what Gen AI is. So the idea is we have these large language models or these deep neural networks that are trained on large amount of text data or image data. And now they are capable of, given a text prompt or a text input, now they are capable of generating a response. Now the key term here is generating. So before 1 or 5 years or so before, we were not able to generate content, but now we are at a stage where we can give a prompt and we can generate a response. For example, I can give a prompt saying, generate an image of a woman sitting sitting on a sofa in a sunny morning, something like that, and it will generate me an image. I can use a Gen AI tool that can generate an image after taking a text input. Similarly, there are Gen AI tools that can take the text input and generate a text output. So I think almost all of us would be familiar with a tool like ChatGPT. If you are not familiar, can you please raise hand? Yeah, so these are some examples of the generative AI tools that can help us in some of the steps that I mentioned in publication process, especially when it comes to the writing process. So I'm not focusing here on the research, conducting the research part. So I'm focusing only the writing part. So in terms of the generative AI tools, the examples of Gen AI tools that can help us in generating content, summarization, or extracting details, there are tools like ChatGPT, Gen AI, Bard from Google, or Consensus, or PDF Gear, which allows us to upload PDF documents and ask questions from that. And also Microsoft has their Copilot platform integrating a lot of tools based on Gen AI, and they can help us to generate content, summarize, or extracting details. I will quickly, I'm sure most of all of us are now familiar with these tools, but just for the completion, I'll make a demo of the ChatGPT. So for a tool like ChatGPT, which is a generative AI tool, I can go there. I asked you a question in this survey. How are you making an impact? And I think I also had a question saying, explain to me, I'm considering I am a 5-year-old kid. So for example, I can ask a question, how can I explain structural engineering to a 5-year-old kid? So I'm asking ChatGPT. So it can be a very handy tool for brainstorming. So then it can, I have to keep it repeating. It is generating me a response. It's generating me a response with the highest probability that it thinks that this would be a good example or good way to explain structural engineering to a 5-year-old. So imagine you are building, you are stacking a bunch of building blocks, something like that, and it's using that example to say what structural engineering is all about. So similarly, there are ways that we can use ChatGPT to accelerate our ChatGPT or any other this Gen AI tool for in the case of generating content, summarization, or extracting details. As well as there are some popular tools that are enabling grammar correction and paraphrasing that have now incorporated these Gen AI models into their models, into their tools, such as Quillbot and Grammarly. But I think for a forum of engineers, I don't have to emphasize a lot about how to access this tool very easily, find manuals or user documentations, and also through Google search and all, we can find very effective ways of doing that. But I wanted to emphasize this during this session. If we are using generative AI tools in the publication process, what does that mean? So as I said, so the hype around generative AI tools came almost 1 year, even 1 year before, and scientific publishers or the scientific writing, the community that who are involved in scientific writing was the first to pick up on it, because this was, it was text-to-text tools, and it can be very effectively integrated into writing. So it was immediately considered for scientific writing. And now almost every journal would have a policy around how should you quote or how should you cite if you are using generative AI tools in your work. For example, this American Psychology Association, the very famous APA, they are suggesting this guideline. They are saying that if you have used ChatGPT or any other AI tools in your research, you have to describe how you use that tool in your method section. If you are using that tools in your research, you should cite that or mention that in your method section. If not, if you are using it for writing purposes, generally to improve your writing, it is the guideline is to acknowledge that you have used these tools to improve your writing. And it is not now recommended at all to list generative AI tools as an author. When these generative AI tools were introduced close to beginning of the 2023, we actually had papers that had ChatGPT as an author, but anymore it's not accepted. So, right. And of course, what are the consequences of not the credible use of these resources? For example, this is a real case. I can even give this link to you. If you search for this, there is this article, and if you go to the introduction section, it immediately says, certainly here is a possible introduction for your topic. And if you look at my ChatGPT answer, it says it can be fun and simple. Here's a way to do it. So which means that, it's what it says is that definitely these authors have used a Gen AI tool to generate or refine the introduction section, and none knows how during the publication process, without being noticed, it has reached the publication, and it's very evident that they have used this Gen AI tool, and it has not been cited, but it's very evident in the introduction itself. There is this sentence has been included. So this is a good summary of what is a practical guideline for the use of generative AI tools in the publication process for authors. So this guide from STM, it actually outlines the practical guidelines for authors, editors, and readers as well in terms of using generative AI tools when working throughout the publication process. I only extracted the guideline corresponding to the authors. So what it says is that when it comes to using generative AI tools, something like ChatGPT or Grammarly or Bard or a similar one, as a basic author support tool to refine, correct, edit, or format your text and documents, it's permitted, and disclosure is generally not necessary. But you can consider to include that in the acknowledgement section. And So if you're using it as a transcending basic author support tool, disclosure is necessary. And creating, altering, or manipulating original research data and results, it is not permitted. And crediting GenAI as an author of a published work, it's not permitted. If I spend a few more minutes in here, as I said, these large language models, what they have, they essentially are large language models or deep neural networks that have been trained on large amount of data. That data can be already published publications. So immediately, if you pay attention to that overall process, what you see is that because these generative AI tools are using a bunch of training data, in fact, large amount of training data, there are a few conclusions that we can make about Gen AI tools. One is that they can be biased towards the training data that they have seen. So they can be biased, and also there can be hallucinations. So there can be fake data that's just being generated because there is no search process involved. We are generating content. So there can be fake content. So there can be hallucinations. There can be bias. At the same time, there can be copyright issues. The world is still split between these copyright issues in generative AI tools, especially because they are not disclosing what is the training data that have used. Because in publications, if you are using somebody else's work and you are presenting it as your own, it will be considered as plagiarism. At the same time, let's say you are using somebody else's work to train your generative AI models, and now there are users using those generative AI models to generate new content. So is the copyright of that original training data is safe or not? Because the copyrights usually say that it's not permitted to reproduce, alter, or manipulate that. But essentially, when we are using these generative AI tools, we can be manipulating, altering these original content, and it's not permitted, so we have to pay attention on that. I think I have almost reached the end of my presentation. In this session today, we started off by looking at the history of publications and why we should publish. And then we look at what are the key steps in the publication process. We talked about the scientific misconduct, and we looked at what are the how generative AI tools can assist this publication process. At the same time, what are the scientific misconduct that that we should be careful when we are using these Gen AI tools in the publication process. I think it all jolts down into why we are doing research at the first place. Why we are driven to publish our work at the first place. I think research is an opportunity for us to, it is always an opportunity for us to discover more of ourselves. More of ourselves as where do we stand in terms of the knowledge? Where do we stand in terms of the skills? And where do we stand in terms of scientific conduct? And where do we stand in terms of ethics? Where do we stand as professionals? Where do we stand as responsible engineers? So I think this research or the whole publication process jolts down into discovering more of ourselves. With that note, and in wishing us all happy exploring of ourselves, I will wind up my talk and happy to take any questions. And I would appreciate your feedback at this link as well. Thank you so much.
Right. Actually, thank you very much, Dr. Damayanti, for your comprehensive discussion today. Actually, as always, you were very clear and very concise and comprehensive, and you were always using tools and technique to make the interaction high. So even though we had a little bit of technical errors during our session, I think our members got the maximum benefit out of this session. And if you have any questions, still we can allocate a couple of minutes. So we are scheduled to end this session by 7:30, or else you can communicate in the chat box. Otherwise, this is a live recording. So this recording will be published in ISL YouTube as well. So the participant can later refer this one and get the more idea and benefits. So if the speaker is okay, I can share some presentation things and all with you all. So if we right, okay, so right, thank you very much. Yeah. So if we don't have questions by now, we can wind up the session. Actually, as for the formality, I should thank IESL CEO Engineer Neil Abhisekar and his dedicated team for arranging this program. This was a live recording at IESL Mavisari Studio. So thank you everyone who joined from there as well, and all the members of Young Members section and the ISL members. Thank you very much for your active participation. And on the other hand, this was collaboratively organized by IEEE Power and Energy Chapter Sri Lanka. So the chairman of IEEE PS, Dr. Akila Vijayatunga, thank you very much for making this combination to conduct this session ahead. And finally, I should thank Dr. Damayanti Herath, a senior lecturer, Department of Computer Engineering, University of Peradeniya, for joining with us as always. She was very solid and precise with her work. So thank you very much for allocating this time for us. And that was very good eye-opening for everyone who joined this program. So tomorrow we'll have the third part of this session. So thank you everyone, and we'll meet tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you everyone, and have a good evening. Thanks. Bye.